Here's a comment from our last RPG horror story video, the one where a person thought their marriage in Final Fantasy was actually a real marriage. A good number of years ago, I had a similar tendency with my partner. They start talking about a game, and I'd notice, oh hey, a marriage system. You know, I could join and we could be together in there too. It'll be cute. And it kinda was, but I eventually got justifiably told off. My partner told me, if you want to start playing too, I won't stop you, but you don't need to marry me in every game. It's just weirdly sad to go through the process and then look at how long it's been since you played a game I really like. And I just went, fair. I stopped doing that. They have their stuff, I have my stuff. I don't need to jam my way into all their games if I'm not actually there to enjoy the game itself. It's a folly found in young love, and I can't really fault it. It's a lesson to learn, an experience to have, and a conversation to have. It's always good to see these mild ones end with people learning, maturing, and moving on. If only they could all be like that. Because buckle in, this episode gets frickin' insane. Hello everyone, this is the story of one of my first D&D groups, which I played together with my wife. I found the Dungeon Master online and joined his game. He seemed like a good DM. He was good at role-playing, world-building, and made a good effort on his voice acting too, so we mostly had fun. But some red flags started to appear, mostly on his behavior. The encounters felt like a competition where the Dungeon Master always wanted to win, and no matter what we did, he pulled something from under his sleeve to turn the tides in his favor. Here's a couple simple examples. Number 1, on a mountaintop with barely enough room, we were ordered, as part of our first quest, we were all level 2, to pull up on a fight with enemies way beyond our level just to kill us all with one enemy casting a fireball. Crap, none of it did well on initiative. This is gonna be a tough fight. Hey, it's okay. I know we didn't do well on initiative, but you know, the first roll isn't everything. This is our first combat, alright? You know, not everything's gonna go our way, and that's part of what makes this game so fun. But we can turn this around. Yeah, you're right. We've got a solid party composition, well-built characters, even just for level 2. I think we got this. Exactly. Now we just have to brace ourselves for whatever the wizard throws at us. Looks like some kind of fire spell. It's probably Firebolt, since at this level, Fireball would be completely unreasonable. So we all died, and the deity of the priest revived us all, and the Dungeon Master acted like we're all incompetent players, and he is just so merciful for letting us live. Okay, at this point, I'm like, a bit unfair, but I guess he wanted to push the narrative. Number 2, we arrived at a village where they held an artifact we had to get. We managed to infiltrate it. I turn invisible and get to said artifact on the pedestal. I rolled multiple strength rolls, none of them below 10. But the Dungeon Master said the artifact did not budge. Now the enemy comes in with an illusion wizard, casting spells to make it seem like the whole town transformed into zombies, act and seem like zombies, and the rest of the party starts fighting. Then the wizard proceeds to grab the artifact without even rolling strength and proceeds to run away while turning invisible. As a rogue using bonus actions and action to dash, still, the wizard outran me. Okay, another case where it did not seem we had any chance of winning. Alright, 3, and this is where everything falls apart. During the games, we had several new players joining, but most were either expelled by the Dungeon Master or left since they were not comfortable. Another important note is that we are hosting all of our sessions at our place. At one point, we were comfortable with 5 players, and we're continuing the adventure. Well, the Dungeon Master, a couple days before, said, okay, we found this new player, which will play with us, and you have no say in it. My wife, being a bit of an introvert, did not want too many people at our place, and told him she thought it was too many for her comfort, and that it would be nice to ask us, the homeowners, before making any new additions. Well, this is where the Dungeon Master lost it. He started insulting my wife, calling her all types of names, saying he can do whatever he wants because he created this whole thing and is the only one who can decide. My wife called him out on his past, telling him he's got a big ol' ego and a god complex. His response? I don't need to know your opinions, because I know they are wrong. I calculated every scenario, and I am sure this is the right choice which you will like. Well, this went into a bit of a back and forth where the Dungeon Master refused to accept any fault, and me and my wife were trying to point out that we liked his game, but his personality made it really hard to play with him. Well, we had a couple unpleasant texts after this, and he straight up just insulted us, calling us crappy players that never appreciated him and crapped on all his work. So of course, we stopped playing, and the other players left after this too. I saw him on social media searching for new players, but now he is charging for his sessions. I mean, good luck with that. Good luck with that indeed. This story is a good example of how even if you are a really good dungeon master, all it takes is a few really rough scenarios to sour the game for a lot of people. I assume that aside from these 3 events, the dungeon master for the most part is a good DM with fun role-playing and world building, etc. However, these railroaded events really do affect the game. You're taking away player agency. It's so crucial. You can have a really awesome campaign, but if you have 3, 4, 5 times where players are losing their agency, those things stick in their minds. Of course, the true horror story is how this dungeon master talked to the homeowning couple. Absolutely unacceptable. If people are lending you their home so that you can play your freaking board game, you give them some respect on that. Whatever role they're playing in your campaign, you need to respect their boundaries. Otherwise, you can leave. It's not your home. This was my first experience playing an actual game of Dungeons & Dragons. I've played a couple one-shots before this, but nothing that lasted more than 1 session. Everyone in this group was pretty new to D&D. Only a couple of us had ever played before. I should not have ignored the red flags when I saw them. We were playing a simple 5th edition homebrew world I roughly built. I just gave the setting. It wasn't like I built the world specifically for me. Let me introduce the characters. We have Bruno, a halfling bard who planned to seduce anything he could see, a dwarven cleric named Terry, Big Daniel, a huge hill dwarf that never really showed up, Abigail, my half-elven sorcerer, and the problem character, Chuck. Names changed and like all that jazz. Chuck was a tiefling and a druid. Everyone in the party built their characters and had fun roleplay, puzzle solving, light combat experience, all except for Chuck. Chuck used every exploit he could to build the most powerful character he could. I didn't think much of this, as this was the first time I'd made a character for a session. One note to keep in mind for this story, my character was a former... It was a homebrewed background we made that added a skill called Seductive Persuasion and nothing else. We used Roll20 and Acolyte just didn't fit for my character, so we made this background. This was Chuck's excuse, constantly asked my character for sex. Very annoying, but I dismissed it as in-game roleplay. Stupid me. We started with Dungeon Master 1. Yeah, there was multiple Dungeon Masters, more on that later. Anyway, we introduce all of our characters at the infamous tavern everyone and their mother has met at. We get a quest by someone there to take care of an NPC in the market causing trouble. Simple enough. If the world seems kind of basic and empty, that's because it was. We had little to no world building and never really rolled outside of combat. We reach the market and roll initiative. The enemy of the session was an old person named Gramps, so it was an old grandpa versus 5 adventurers.
Go in for Pop Pop.
It's funny because Pop Pop is what his grandchildren call him.
Get her, Pop Pop!
Gramps actually turned out to be quite the handful when he knocked out Chuck with a thrown shoe. I think I got the final blow on the target, which will become a trend in this campaign. Gramps had no loot, and the quest giver gave no rewards. What did happen was the local blacksmith, who had no relation to the quest, gave us all free armor, and that's fine, nothing inherently wrong with that. So we get our armor, except for me, because it would actually lower my armor class, and we end the session. Chuck immediately begins to argue with Dungeon Master 1 about how bad the session was. He said that the conversations with the NPCs were terrible, we never rolled perception, and the fight was executed poorly. And he was right, but the last one wasn't entirely the Dungeon Master's fault. Dungeon Master 1 got mad and he left. Chuck nominated himself to become the new Dungeon Master, and nobody really cared enough to object to it, so Chuck is now the ultimate ruler of our fates. This was the next red flag, but however, I was blissfully ignorant and blew by it without a second glance. The next session starts with Chuck playing both the Dungeon Master and his character. This worked fine for the session, but started causing problems. I don't remember anything specific, but we agreed to remove Chuck's character from the story. It just ended with his character disappearing somehow. Now might be a good time to explain what the end goal was. The country we were from was ruled by Queen Scarlet. Queen Scarlet was a ruthless dictator who hated any race that wasn't human, especially elves. This tied into my backstory. My father was a human in Scarlet's military, and my mother was an elven house slave he had. One night, Scarlet ordered the purge of all elves from the country. My mother was killed helping me escape. This gave me motive for the main questline. We were going to kill the queen and liberate the country. So, in the next session, we were on the road heading to our objective. I forgot what the quest was supposed to be, but we never really got there. Chuck had Bruno roll for something. Then he said, "The trees look suspicious." Bruno, being the chaotic dude he was, starts trash-talking the trees. Well, turns out, one of these trees wasn't just a tree. We were informed that Bruno just pissed off a tree ent. We were all forced into combat and rolled initiative. My character made heavy use of long-range cantrips. Firebolt was my choice of attack, being able to fire from 120 feet away. This allowed me to deal significant damage from a more safe distance. The rest of the party wasn't so lucky. Big Daniel had left the campaign at this point because of prior obligations, and the cleric was tanky enough to withstand the damage. However, the bard was not. By the end of the fight, the cleric was actually knocked unconscious, and the bard was killed. I managed to snipe the tree from across the field. Chuck gave Bruno a mask, which sort of revived him. It made him sort of like a warlock now. He had access to evocation magic and had a patron to please. This is where that session ended. Nothing too bad, but Bruno the bard was mad at first. I think he got over it, but honestly, I'm not really sure. The session began in the tavern we basically lived in at this point. Bruno was hitting on random people eating their dinner, and the cleric was doing something in his room. My character was at the bar trying to have a simple dinner when this happened. A character leans over to me and asks, "Do you want to hear a secret?" I was kind of confused by this. "What?" I asked him. "Do you want to hear a secret?" he asks again. This time with a bit more excitement in his voice. Before I could do anything, he sinks a knife into my stomach. A poison knife. A paralysis poison knife. He removes his hood to reveal none other than Chuck, the dungeon master, now insert NPC. He takes me to a room and proceeds to... Why? Apparently, this all happened without anyone noticing. No one noticed in-game, and the players were all just too shocked to say anything, I guess. The scene fades to black, and we resume the next morning in the dreaded tavern. By the way, I'm rereading this 4 years later when I'm submitting this through email and noticed some weird phrasing, so let me clear that up. He doesn't fade to black until after the scene is finished, and none of the other players could even do anything once this scene started, even if it was unrelated. He then tells me I have a noticeable bump on my stomach. I was pregnant. And then it got 1,000 times worse. He told me that I was hearing a voice say something about giving birth to the Antichrist, like the literal Antichrist. I am now understandably pissed and panicking. One of my spells or cantrips was Chill Touch, which allows me to latch a hand onto any target in range and drain health from it. I cast this on the unholy being inside of me, only to take double damage myself. The abomination that was growing was invincible due to plot armor. I guess that it was decked in. I stopped attacking and just sat there hopeless. I forced my character to die, and the campaign ended. Everyone was angry with each other, except the cleric, who just didn't care. This guy railroaded his self-insert character to bestow upon me this Antichrist. None of this had anything to do with the main quest, or world building, or character arcs. No saves, or rolls, or ways to talk out of it. This was just the worst thing I've ever played. And yet somehow, I've played another campaign with him, and I've planned a third one after this virus ends.
Who hurt you? And why didn't it stick?
Now let me tell you about the 2 other campaigns, since it's been 2 years now and the virus hasn't ended. The second campaign lasted 3 sessions. The first session was us escaping from a prison. It was me playing a dragonborn paladin named Greg, who was very naive, Aubrey, a rogue tiefling I think, and Chuck, who played basically the same character, but a blood hunter this time. Also, the player who played Chuck was the dungeon master for this game. We start the prison escape session, and they all roll really badly, but I managed to Kool-Aid my way through the prison until we all escape. This ended the first session. It wasn't that bad, so I stuck around. The first thing Chuck had us do the next session was go to this town and enter a shop. Before we could ask about anything in there and talk to the shopkeeper, he announced that there was an incredibly rare and powerful weapon for sale in a display case. He then went on to say how he killed the shopkeeper and stole the weapon without any rolls or combat. We're forced to leave the shop without any regard for the other 2 players. The rest of the session is just walking around and finding random weapons for him to absorb into his stolen new toy. The third session was the same as the second half of the last. We never rolled, never talked, never did anything but listen to him create the most overpowered magical item I've ever seen. Keep in mind, we're still level 1. I stopped playing after that. The last game wasn't DM'd by Chuck, but by Bruno. I agreed to play on the basis that my character in this was a Yuan-Ti pureblood named Mark. This is still one of my favorite characters, and I'm sad he was wasted on this. The other characters were the normal Chuck guy, but a rogue this time, at least I think. There was Narakakra, who I enjoyed, and a 4th character I can't even remember. We start in the dreaded tavern, but this dungeon master set the scene pretty well and had us play a simple gambling game to give us some starting money and have us start talking. I lucked out in the first game and were given the plot hook. I followed the plot hook with one other character, but the other 2 stayed to gamble the whole session. I can't remember if Chuck was the one to go with me or not. We get into this alleyway, we fight, we win, we get the next clue of the story. This is already going leagues better than the last 2 games. We go to the city to continue the story and find a tavern to ask for directions. Now I need to take a moment to say that my character is written to be very naive and almost childish, but somehow I was given the responsibility to carry the story onwards because everyone else in the party spent the session gambling or drinking. The campaign died at the end of that one game. All in all, I think Chuck is a bad D&D player and a horrible dungeon master, but I don't really know him that well outside the game, so I don't want to judge him as a person so little. I try to do as little with him as possible, though, because I don't want to run the risk of another... Okay, hold on. Look, maybe Chuck is a wonderful guy, but that whole encounter for when he was the dungeon master is straight up unacceptable. That kind of content is disgusting. Even in games that are extremely not safe for work, even there people can get squirmy with that kind of thing. I mean, oh my god, it's just straight up twisted. Maybe he was having like a really bad day at that time or something, but no matter what, it is not okay to spring that kind of content on your players. Period. There is zero excuse. I'm traumatized from just reading that. I wasn't even there. Look, if you feel the need to distance yourself because a person has hurt you, that doesn't mean that you're being irrational or that person's secretly nice or something. It means that they hurt you, and it's reasonable for you to put some distance between them and yourself. Sometimes people just have zero awareness, zero care about the people around them. It's that empathy thing, you know what I mean? This isn't a tabletop thing, this is a life thing. And with people like that, look, you don't need to hate them actively, but you don't need to stay with them either. A few years ago, late 2018, late 2019, I joined a Discord server for asexual people to just chat about the experience and meet nice people, because that was the first time I actually made a social media account of any kind. Mind you, I was 20 at the time. I just grew up very much without the internet. Through the server, I met 3 lovely people, and eventually, after chatting about original characters, writing, and Dungeons and Dragons, we decided to create our own fantasy role-playing game server. We had a story, we had a dice bot, and we invited people we either knew well or just knew vaguely. And for the most part, it started out amazing. I still have very fond memories of that time, and I think it's the reason why I'm still trying to pursue my love for writing. I was a mod, technically a co-owner, but I hadn't taken on admin responsibilities, unlike some of my other friends. I think that server is the reason why I'm not refusing to moderate any community bigger than 5 people max. Guess one bad experience really can ruin it all. I don't quite remember when Abed joined or who dragged him along, but he was just another young adult who was looking for an LGBTQ2+ friendly RPG group. Nailed it first try. We were happy to have him. Well, for the most part, at least. The problem started out subtle enough. He made borderline transphobic comments towards myself and a close friend of mine, but we brushed it aside after a quick chat with him because he himself was trans, and we assumed it was either an internal struggle or like a language barrier problem. Almost all of us, him included, do not speak English as our first language, but instead are from all over the world. Before I get into the events of the horror, I should give a quick content warning for mental health issues and stalking. We were a small group, maybe 15 people, of which about 7 were truly active, but we were all friends. We talked about our struggles outside of role-playing games, and a lot of us are from countries where mental health support is not given or where laws are keeping us from accessing them due to being LGBTQ blah blah. Example, one admin was from Poland, the other was from Israel. Because of that, it wasn't exactly out of the ordinary for someone to vent about their mental health. In hindsight, this was a really bad idea. I lost many nights of sleep wondering if a friend of mine was dead because of the messages they sent into the server. At one point, we even had to call the police to make sure they were found in time because none of us lived in the same country or knew their friends and family. Abed was one of the people who would vent on the regular, and he didn't just vent about his life, he would vent about himself for the most part, degrading himself, putting himself down. Later on I learned this was all an attempt to guilt trip us into giving him compliments, or ignoring former actions or comments of his. This all got so bad that I honestly did not expect to ever hear himself talk positively about himself ever. Well, until he sent a selfie with the text, "I'm cute, I would date myself." Well, at first I would have said, hell yeah, you go, dude. I didn't even get the chance to do so because he immediately deleted it, following it up with insulting his own appearance as if the selfie never existed in the first place. And that is when I got a little suspicious. Now, it could have been insecurity, if not for the stuff that followed. About a day later, a new member joined our server. No one knew them, they didn't have a profile picture or a proper name, we'll call them Britta. They immediately start insulting Abed, telling him he should die, and so on. I was the only mod online due to time zone differences, since Abed and myself live in the same country. I told the new member to, stop, and they didn't, so I banned them, hoping this would resolve the issue. Only it didn't. Immediately, Abed told me that I had put him in physical danger because he knows the guy, IRL, and then went on to say how he should just die and the guy was right after all, and I panicked. I panicked, obviously. I kept telling him that no, we want him around and we're here if he needs to talk. I was worried for a week or so, but ultimately forgot about it until I met Abed and Britta in a different server, where Abed was using the account of quote-unquote Britta to send his own pictures. Apparently, it was his second phone since his first had a broken camera. Yeah, he had joined our server with his own account, insulting himself, telling himself he should die, and then told me I had physically put him in danger because of the ban. Needless to say, we confronted him about it.
You are a stupid butt fit. I knew it!
Knew what? You're the other user that's bullying yourself. Explain, what the heck are you doing, man? I mean, seriously, you manipulated the crap out of all of us. Okay. Put the gun down.
It's too late. You already know too much.
I literally don't know anything at all, okay? That's why I'm here. I just want to understand, man. Why are you doing this?
I was just doing it because I want to have a reason to talk to you guys. I just wanted attention.
Seriously? Like, hey, look, we're all friends here. We're all friends, okay? If you don't need to bait for our attention like this is really wrong, okay? The things you're doing, the things you're saying, it's not okay.
I don't even know if we can still be friends.
Look, we can still be friends. You just need to back off a little bit, all right? We need to set up some healthy boundaries. Why are you looking at me like that?
Well, this is a Crispy's Tavern skit. Someone needs to die every time.
Okay, but actually, he confessed it all, and we kicked him from the server. This was in 2019. Since then, he has found several of my other social media accounts, including my Insta and my Tumblr, and has been DMing me on there, telling me he still wants to be my friend, and how I ruined it all for him. He tried to rejoin our server with the help of a now former friend, who even made him a mod, before we banned him again because he immediately started being transphobic and blaming his past behavior on some kind of brain injury. So, yeah, he hasn't texted me in about a year now, and I have him blocked literally everywhere. I think looking back, the whole role-playing group was ultimately very toxic because it kind of turned into trauma dumping on members and on the mods, and I'm still not ready to take on responsibility on Discord anymore. But I have met some really amazing people on that server, one of which is actually going to fly in and visit me later this year. That's really awesome, and here we see the ultimate flaw with getting close with people online. Look, I have plenty of people who I've gotten close with through Discord or through YouTube, etc. Before this gig, it was my Destiny clan or my World of Warcraft guild, and you know what? Those are really fun, happy memories for me. However, it can turn toxic, especially when people grow way too close way too fast. This sort of trauma dumping isn't really something I'm comfortable with, even with my close friends who I spend time with in real life. even if you are comfortable with that sort of vulnerability, it can lead to further problems. Here we see someone taking it way too far, basically exploiting that vulnerability to bait for compliments and attention. Creating fake accounts like this to degrade yourself, to get your RPG group to be more, I guess, empathetic towards you is, well, it's extremely manipulative and extremely toxic. Actually, now that I think about it, I think real Abed from Community might have some good advice on this.
Bert, I got self-esteem falling out of my butt. That's why I was willing to change for you guys, because when you really know who you are and what you like about yourself, changing for other people isn't such a big deal.
The most important person you need approval from is just yourself. Trying to bait for the approval of others is going to get you hurt real quick, especially if you do it like this. Well, that one got insane, but without further ado, I think we're going to wrap up this episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed, then please leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tavern adjacent podcast where we talk to D&D creators, as well as just talking about TTRPGs in general. It's linked in the cards, and while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment simply unhinged to let me know you made it to the end of the episode. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you want to send them directly to us, there's an email in the description. Send them our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, and that's like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.
Position for the gun.